um, benchmark where you guys are coming from. I know there's plenty guys from Kenya and Nigeria as well. So just tell us where you're coming from. Yo, Lawal, what's up, man? Big up yourself. Nigeria, what's up? Yo, Kenya, yo, Kenyan peeps. I'm your homeboy, you know. So big up yourselves. Dar es Salaam, wow. Yo, Tanzania in the house. Yo, Kajiado, yeah. Yo, Paul, you're in Kajiado?
Yes. I'm in Kajiado.
Yo, Paul, we're gonna
Yeah,
link up soon,
I
man.
live in Kajiado.
Wow, yo, bless up, man. So, if any of you guys have heard of the Maasai tribe, Rob and Scott, have you guys been to Kenya?
I have, yeah.
Oh yeah. So Paul is in the region where the Maasai are plenty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Kajiado. Yeah,
Yeah,
Cool,
sure.
yeah.
yeah. I see Mombasa. Yo, I was born in Mombasa. Yo, nice. My Nairobi people, I see you. All right, we have 1 minute to go. Remember, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So the guys who are in the room today are the guys who are really focused and dedicated to this thing. And you know, pay attention. Some aspects might be or might not be technical, but you're in very capable hands. These are experts of many years. I think even before some of you were born. So, you're in extremely capable hands. So, Rob, Scott, I'm handing over to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right,
Hey
cool.
everyone. I'll just quickly share my screen. Okay, I trust that's all there.
Yeah, it is.
Yep, cool. Right, yeah. So we're going to go over the sort of like the tracing side of things today. Some of the things that we look at and one of the techniques that we use. And then we'll just go over some few bits and then maybe take some questions at the end if there are any. So if I just jump to a very quick intro. Rob and myself have partnered up. We sort of like a joint effort against various things that are going on. So quick background on me. I was in law enforcement for 16 years, specialized in fraud, cyber, and then crypto when that came along. I then left the police, joined a blockchain analytics software provider. I headed up the investigations for a few years. I then left there, joined a big corporate, didn't really like it. So I've now set up my own company, week 5, and looking good. I'll pass to Rob for a quick intro.
Yeah, sure. So, Rob, ex-military. I was in the British Army for 11 years. Left and went into the commercial world in security companies, doing a lot of online investigational work, a lot of fraud investigation, and then got into sort of the crypto space about 5, 6 years ago. Ran a small digital asset company, assisting a crypto custodian. Then also do a lot of investigations on cybercrime, particularly cyber fraud and hacks. And do expert witness, where I was in court as recently as yesterday on a very large case. Over £1 million has been stolen in crypto, and assisting the courts with providing the evidence of where the funds have been moved to.
Cool. Cheers, Rob. So we're gonna cover a few of the basics first. We're not going to go super basic, and we're not going to sort of stay doing that for ages. We'll just go over a quick basics. And the reason it's important is just so if you don't know what crypto is or how the blockchain works or how the money is moved, everything else that follows won't make sense. So we thought we'd cover a few basics first. So the first thing would be the crypto wallet address. That's the main thing that we use to begin our investigations or tracing or whatever you want to call it. And the wallet address is like your unique identifier. It's a long string of letters and numbers, and that allows you to send cryptocurrency on the blockchain network. So on the receiving side, you would share your wallet address, just like you'd share your email address. So, and then anyone can send cryptocurrency to that address, the same as they could send an email to your email address. In terms of when you want to send cryptocurrency, you'll just use that recipient's wallet address instead. So you just reverse that process. So if you think of it like, if you imagine the wallet address is your home address, people can send you packages being the cryptocurrency there, and then you can receive those. The next part to mention is the transaction hash. What is a transaction hash? It's also known as a TXID, usually shortened, and again, it's just another unique identifier associated with every cryptocurrency transaction on a blockchain. So it's like a fingerprint for that transaction. It allows you to track the progress and then verify the legitimacy of that transaction. Each transaction hash is unique and it serves as that identifier for that specific transaction on the blockchain. And again, the tracking side, you can use that hash to track the status of your transaction on various blockchain explorers, and we'll show you one of those a bit later on. And there's loads of free ones as well online, which you can do. And again, the verification, as I said, it helps verify the authenticity of that transaction using complex cryptography, which is then nearly impossible to alter or forge. So some of the reasons why you might need those transaction hashes or how they're used. And the first one is providing customer support. So when contacting a cryptocurrency exchange or a wallet provider for help with a transaction, you may have had some funds stolen or there's some issues, that they will ask you for that transaction hash so that they can find it within their own system before they give you any more information. And another reason is auditing transactions. A lot of the banks are asking for this now of wealthy individuals and others. And they use those hashes to track and then perform audits to make sure it hasn't touched anything illicit or anything it shouldn't have. The next part is the public and private keys, and this is just the backbone of security and functionality within cryptocurrency. They work together as a system called public key cryptography, or PKC, and that allows for secure communication and transactions without needing a central authority. So the public key, if you think of that as your mailing address, it's a long string of numbers and letters that anyone can see that, and they can use that to send you cryptocurrency. It's perfectly fine to share your public key with anyone that you want to receive cryptocurrency from. The public key itself doesn't store your cryptocurrency. It just acts like a lockbox with a specific slot, but without the key, no one else can open it. And then we move on to the private key, and this is the master key to your crypto. Again, it's another long, unique alphanumeric code. Do not share that one. This is essential for spending. So only with that private key of yours can you sign and authorize transactions, which then unlocks the crypto associated with your public key. It goes without saying, keep these safe. It's like losing your physical cash. Anyone who finds it will have complete control over your assets. So if you imagine it as an analogy, so think of your public key as your house's doorbell. So anyone can ring that doorbell. But your private key is more like the house key. So only you have it, and it's crucial for entering and using what's inside. And then lastly, we have the seed words, which is this one here. Seed words, also known as recovery phrases, backup seed phrases, or mnemonic phrases. They play a crucial role in the world of cryptocurrency. They're a sequence of randomly generated words, but they hold the information needed to recover your cryptocurrency holdings. Even if you lose the wallet or the data gets corrupted, but if you ever lose these, you've lost your crypto as well. There's very few cases where you can actually get some back. I'll pass on to Rob for the next slide.
Thank you. So there's various different wallets you can have, from hosted to unhosted to hot and cold, and they vary in the type and in terms of convenience. Some are more convenient to use than others, and it's just a way of storing your public and your private key. Hot wallet is one that is connected to the internet. Okay, therefore, it's connected to the internet, is therefore potentially vulnerable. And for example, yesterday, I was in court where a cold wallet had been hot, and then once it was hot, there was believed to be malware, which then allowed the threat actors, the bad guys, to steal the crypto in large amounts. Now there are other ways where you can take your wallet completely offline and completely secure. Again, if your seed phrase becomes exposed, you can replicate that private key elsewhere. So storing that seed phrase is critical, as in being secure. And there's different ways of doing that. Some people put them onto sort of metal and inscribe them, and store them in secure locations. And there's a term within the crypto industry: not your keys, not your crypto. If your keys are held elsewhere, for example, for convenience purposes on a crypto exchange, and something happens to that crypto exchange, whether it be a hack or in a similar vein to what happened with FTX, you can't get access to your keys, you can't get access to your crypto, and effectively it will be gone. So there's various different convenience options, whether it be applications as well, for example, like MetaMask there, which can be add-ons into a browser or on applications on your phone. If you go into the App Store on Android or Apple, simply type in crypto or Bitcoin or something like that, you'll see a plethora of different applications you can use to set up a crypto wallet within your phone. And also things like there with the Ledger, more cold storage, where they will be cold where they're not online, but as soon as they're plugged into a laptop and that sort of thing, they become hot effectively and connected to the internet. Over to you, Scott.
Yeah, so going to move on to like how the transactions work. So inputs and outputs. So again, it's like giving someone cash, but in digital form. And again, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but it's just one of those things. It's important to know if you're, looking at the due diligence, compliance, tracing, anything around that. You need to know how it actually works. So the inputs, they're the funds you're using to send money. They come from past transactions, called UTXOs, or unspent transaction outputs. So each input proves that you own the funds with a digital signature, and the outputs, this is where the money is going. You specify how much you're sending and the recipient's address. So for example, in this example here, I've got me and I've got Rob. So if you have 10 Bitcoin, as I have here, in my unspent transaction output, and I want to pay Rob 5 Bitcoin. So I've got one output, which is the 10 Bitcoin, and then one input, which is the 10 Bitcoin, and two outputs, which is 5 Bitcoin going to Rob, and then there's 5 coming back to me in change. After that transaction is confirmed and added to the blockchain, it's then marked as spent, and then a new unspent transaction amount is created, and I get my change. So common spending is and change. This is just the amount that you send to the recipient. And the change is just the leftover amount that comes back to you. And just like cash transactions, you wouldn't rip a $10 bill in half to pay $5. In crypto, you send the full amount available in the unspent transaction output and get the remaining balance as change. If there are multiple unspent transaction outputs, they would be combined to cover that amount. So there could be one of 10, 10, and 10, and if I wanted to send 30, it would use all 3 to make 30 to send back to Rob, and then I'd have no change. Let's move on to IP addresses. Not quite sure why that line's appeared. But don't worry about
We'll
it.
roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So IP addresses themselves don't necessarily play a big role in tracing crypto. They are not stored on the blockchain. All that's there is crypto addresses and transaction hashes, and now these addresses are anonymous, so they don't reveal a true user's identity. However, they can be used in a number of ways and become useful, whereby a threat actor that we're trying to identify has been interacting with a crypto exchange. These IP addresses will usually be logged within the sort of service provider, and they will collect these IP addresses as well as a number of other information of the user that has been accessing that platform to send crypto, maybe to a swapping service or to a crypto exchange account and that sort of thing. Now, analyzing these IP addresses can give us useful information in a way of potential geolocation information, but also then cross-referencing across other addresses and information and data points that we're looking at. For example, I've got a case at the moment where we're identifying that a single IP address is being used from multiple different account holders, thereby sort of implying that they are coming from one and the same location, and possibly same person or persons behind the criminality.
Cool.
Thanks,
So
Scott.
let's move. Yeah, thanks, mate. Let's move on to smart contracts. You know, again, it's just a computer program. It runs on a blockchain, and it automatically enforces agreements without needing a middleman like a lawyer or a bank. So basically, how they work, the contracts rules are written in code and they're stored on the blockchain. And then when certain conditions are met, the contract executes automatically, i.e., so for example, it might send payment when goods are delivered. But they can be used for finance, supply chains, insurance, digital identity, and more and more. So like the benefits of these, you know, no middlemen, faster and cheaper transactions, the transparency, everyone can see the contract's terms, and you know, the automation, it reduces human error and fraud, you know, providing it's been put together correctly in the first place. There are some risks and exploits with these, and they could potentially be hacked or misused. One of those is bugs in the code. So, you know, if the smart contract's got errors, you know, hackers can exploit those, which has happened before, like with the DAO hack, which led to millions of dollars being stolen. There's also malicious contracts. So some contracts are designed to be scams. So people would deposit funds and then it would automatically drain their wallets. Again, social engineering, again, they just try and trick users into sending funds to fake contracts to reveal their private keys and again, drain their wallets. We'll move on to the landscape. So we're going to talk about illicit services and bad actors.
Yeah, thanks. So, rising crypto crime. I mean, everyone should be aware of the recent Bybit hack of close to $1.5 billion was stolen, effectively in one transaction. It's that large. It's going to take years to unpick. With the cryptos being moved across hundreds, if not thousands, of addresses now, different services, and already I think about 20% has been deemed lost. That amount was stolen by North Korea's Lazarus Group, and it's effectively assessed to be about 5% of the GDP of North Korea. But off the back of that, there's also other illicit transactions which hit around $41.5 billion last year alone, and expected this year to just keep on rising. And of that, the stable coins now make up around 63% of the illicit activity, currently replacing Bitcoin. So those stable coins are like USDT, Tether, or USDC, Circle. And our assessment is the reason for that is if they take $1, which is, you know, one USDT is one worth dollar, they're going to get $1 at the end. Whereas if it's something like Bitcoin or any other crypto can fluctuate, where stable coins stay the same by the nature of how they are. So Bybit is not the only exchange to have been hacked. Also, Japan's DMM exchange lost 305 million in Bitcoin. Back to North Koreans, the Lazarus Group, they currently hold 13,580 Bitcoin, around about 865 million pounds there or thereabouts from cyber heists, making North Korea themselves the third largest holder of Bitcoin. It's fairly impressive when you think about it. Now, some of the mixing services, which we'll go into more shortly, but one of them, or Tornado Cash, the sanctions were lifted recently by Trump. But they originally sanctioned for laundering estimated $7 billion worth. And now that sanction's been lifted this month. And the landscape's going to be ever increasing. We're seeing it from our side, the scam side of things, with AI being used, whereby threat actors are cloning people, making AI bots to speak to the victims, to coerce them into and manipulate them into investing into fake trading platforms, and all sorts of different ways, using AI as your workforce to scam people and manipulate and steal their crypto, essentially.
Cool. So the money laundering techniques. So how do they get rid of the money? or off ramp into fiat. And the current top 5 crypto money laundering techniques, you know, this is up for debate still, but this is what most people are saying. You know, one is mixing services or tumblers, you know, so like Tornado Cash, they shuffle funds around, and the reason is just to break transaction trails. And we'll go into mixers in a bit more detail in a bit. The next one is cross-chain swaps and bridges. So what they do is they move assets across blockchains to evade detection. And you know, and I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment. So they'll go from Bitcoin to Ethereum, to then to some random Ethereum token. They'll then go to, say, the 1inch exchange or Uniswap, and then back again, and then convert back to Bitcoin again, and then go off to, like, say, Binance, for example, and then cash out. But that definitely seems to be the way forward. What they're doing. The next one's privacy coins, and I think Monero is probably the most popular at the moment. It's not, you know, not used as much as mixing services, but it's probably on the increase. And they, you know, and they're just cryptocurrencies that offer built-in, you know, features of privacy, you know, similar to a mixer. They use similar things just to obfuscate the amounts. Another popular technique is pill chains. You know, all they do is they break the larger sum into loads of little small transactions, and then just throw it into loads of little wallets, and then some point down the line consolidate again, and then cash out. The last one is sort of gambling, and NFT wash trading. So crypto casinos, you know, I see them getting used a lot on some of the more random tokens. And another thing people have been doing, and, you know, I said this from the start, you know, they would create an NFT, but then buy it themselves, creating a fake value for it, and then obviously sell it off, and or whatever, just keep recycling it to launder their funds that way. Yeah, and there's the next one for you, Rob.
Thanks, mate. So identifying mixer use here is myself and Scott both use Crystal Intelligence as a visualization tool to help understand what's happening on the blockchain. You can use open source blockchain explorers, but after a little while, it will set your head in a flat spin. It's hard to understand. These visualization tools are critical in understanding how the flow of funds is occurring. Now, to help assist identifying mixers on there, and these can be labeled or they may be unlabeled. We don't know who they are and essentially who's behind them. But these services are out there, and there'll be hundreds, if not thousands, available on the surface, deep, and dark web. And one of them, for example, called Washcoin, is what it says on the tin, and it's literally drop-down menus of how you want your funds to be mixed and sent across the blockchain to try and stop people like me and Scott coming along and identifying where you're sending your stolen funds, for example. The way we sort of identify mixers is either one, if they're labeled by Crystal for their massive intelligence database that they've got, or two, by sort of various indicators that when we're looking at each address for the blockchain, certain things are taking place. Certainly high transaction volumes, okay? Seeing there, it's had a big throughput of funds, thousands of transactions, and it's operating like a crypto exchange hot wallet would look like, with, you know, transactions every few seconds or every few minutes, and, you know, multiple inputs, multiple outputs, and then trying to ascertain where the flow of funds are going. You know, it potentially could stop there at that mixer, and you have to sort of step back and go, okay, I've gone as far as I can. I can't trace through this, or actually I can understand what is going on here, or maybe strategically try and understand that mixing service. Is it linked to an exchange in some way, shape, or form? We can then go down that route. But there's various sort of reasons for using these, legitimate reasons for privacy concerns and that sort of thing. But as with anything in this type of space, invariably also then be used by criminality, unfortunately. It's just the nature of the beast. So yeah, they're not necessarily illegal or nefarious. However, they're often used by such for obvious reasons to try and stop people like myself and Scott coming after them.
Yeah,
Over to you.
Yeah. So the trouble with mixers, and there's a few. So, the main one, the blockchain intelligence firms, so like Crystal, like Chainalysis, they identify mixers very easily by analyzing the transaction behavior. High volume, multiple inputs and outputs, unconnected transfers, and it makes it easy to flag those. So when you look at the tool, it will show it is a mixer, and that then, so it doesn't make it that useful in terms of hiding the mixer itself. Another point is they have limited value to a ransomware group. So although ransomware groups will get paid in crypto or ask for funds in crypto, they don't generally convert that back to traditional money. Most of the time, they will buy further services on darknet marketplaces like ransomware as a service, or whatever it might be, tools or hackers to do specific things. Depends on what they want. So they don't really use them. Another point is most of the off ramps, so like your exchanges, they won't accept funds directly from a mixing services. They can see, like we can see, that they've been for a mixer, and as a result, due to risk and anti money laundering regulations, they just won't accept that, and they're basically stuck with it otherwise. So it's more mixers are more are often used by crypto thieves just to break transaction trails, just making it harder for investigators to trace stolen funds. Not necessarily like the massive amounts. It depends. Another point is that mixers require a lot of participants to be effective. So, the effectiveness of a mixer, it depends on the number of users mixing the funds. So if you don't have that many people using it, it just makes it pretty easy to detect that those are the funds.
There's also a bit more on privacy coins we've mentioned a few times here, and some of you may or may not have heard of these, Monero being a sort of biggest, most sort of known about and popular one. Now, with the other types of coins, Bitcoin, etc., there's a public ledger out there, which is great and fantastic for when myself and Scott want to look at the flow of funds and that sort of thing. And it's almost like a Dickensian style ledger, or someone out there logging and everything, and it's published for everyone to see, which is great and fantastic. But these privacy coins, they take it a different route for this, and do not display these sort of any of the transaction history, the account balances, and any of the transactions, which is then becomes frustrating. However, as Scott's already mentioned, most of these privacy coins are not accepted by this sort of most of the crypto exchanges out there. So if you've got these coins, you've either got to keep them in those coins and send them around to whoever. However, when it comes to swapping them for another type of coin that you can cash out or send to exchange, you're going to find yourself in a bit of a trouble. So that's why we tend to see, especially in the scam space, is they prefer coins like USDT, USDC, and Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that sort of thing. Now, they're great for sort of personal financial privacy, avoiding censorship and that sort of thing. However, if you're going to be sort of laundering, like I say, it's difficult. To what the terminology we call is off ramp. So where you want to take them out of coins and put them into cold hard cash, that can be tricky. There will be services out there, but they'll be few and far between and made more difficult for you.
So just talk a little bit about attack vectors and just the way that people, the methods that are used. And as I said in the chat, all the methods that are used in crypto, in terms of getting the money in the first place, it's all the same as it ever has been. Same as I was in the fraud squad for 16 years. It's the same methods from back then that's still being used. It's just crypto now instead of carbon credits or diamonds or whatever it might be. So the first one is rug pulls and exit scams. Developers create fake projects. They get some money and disappear with users' funds. You see this a lot with social media influencers. It's like one of the things I really hate. You know, they'll pump a coin and say, yeah, this is great. You know, their 10 million viewers, like followers, will buy this coin. They will sell their holdings, make a load of money, and then it will just tank to zero. And you see this all the time. I was at a conference today, and the Financial Conduct Authority was saying that they're now starting to go after these influencers in the UK and bringing them to justice. And I know America has, I think they fined Kim Kardashian 23 million, I think it was, something along them lines, for promoting a bad investment. Another vector, and it's one I already mentioned, was the smart contract exploits, just bugs or vulnerabilities, as we already said. Another one is exchange and wallet hacks. So, you know, centralized platforms, they're prime targets for hacks and insider threats. You know, we hear it all the time about exchanges getting hacked. You know, a lot of time North Korea, but it happens. But they send, you know, and it's the same with traditional finance and banks. They organized criminals will send people into those organizations, into certain areas or certain departments, and pass that information off, or they'll open that email within the organization to allow them to do whatever they need to do. And that's, you know, and that then moves on to the phishing attacks, and it's the same stuff. And then again, the last one really, bridge and cross-chain attacks, and it's just weak security in those bridges, which allows hackers to exploit the vulnerabilities and drain all that liquidity.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And yeah, we've worked on, just from your slide, mate, we've both worked on a number of cases across those different attack vectors, and they're still ongoing. In fact, they're probably getting worse and worse and worse soon. But now onto sort of the illicit marketplaces. Now, on the dark web, it's very easy to come and find one of these. Now, everyone probably would have heard of the Silk Road back in 2011, which is what sort of the first version, and effectively it's like an illegal version of eBay where you can buy all sorts of various drugs, guns, illicit services, fake credit cards, hacking services, all manner of you know, illegal items. Now, Silk Road was shut down in 2013. I think there's even a Hollywood film out there about it. And the main guy, Ross Ulbricht, was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2015. However, Trump has just pardoned him in January. However, Silk Road was taken down, and a number of others spun up very quickly. It's almost like whack-a-mole. Sometimes these darknet marketplaces, you'll go to them and you'll see, you know, seized by the NCA, the FBI, and that sort of thing, taken down. However, there are plenty more, and it's quite easy to find these marketplaces from the surface web, where you'll see just doing a basic search, Google search, will find you Reddit forums and that sort of thing, where people will posting the onion address, which is the dark web address, to get to these marketplaces. It takes you a matter of seconds to find, and there, within fairly quickly, you'll start to see all sorts up for sale, from, like I say, drugs, guns, to a number of online hacking services for hire, fake credit cards, fake passports, and all of their payments will be in crypto. So they will put up, if you want to buy an AK-47, for example, they'll have a wallet address there for you to pay into, and then the AK-47 gets sent to you in the post, possibly. Bearing in mind these are criminal services, and also a lot of them may well be sting operations by law enforcement. But what we see when we're following crypto from, say, a scam, is some of these addresses might actually be interacting with some of these darknet marketplaces. So they're buying services or AK-47s, or you don't know. However, it gives us an idea of, actually, yeah, these address in question is actually up to no good. So the beauty of using Crystal Intelligence, for example, is every address we take a look at, and you would have seen some screenshots previously, we can see the history, we see the background of what that address has been up to, where it's been receiving funds from, where it's been sending funds to. And if darknet marketplaces, if it's been receiving or sending from, that paints a bit of a picture and gives more intelligence as to what is going on chain.
Cool. So we're going to now look at how about beginning a crypto investigation, and we'll work for a case example. But before we do, I'll just very, very quickly go over how the blockchain tools get their data, basically. So, there's a few ways they do it. They scrape the internet and download various bits. They pay intelligence companies for data, or they get given stuff from law enforcement and other agencies. And then they obviously then can label those and give data attribution. And if we look at the diagram, if you use an open source tool or a blockchain explorer, just like Etherscan, for example, and you try doing it manually, you'd end up with a picture something like this, because you'd just be going from address to address to address, and you get what's known as address blindness, and it just gets like really griefy. And that is the main reason we use blockchain analytics tool. I mean, years ago it would have been okay to do it that way, but now with thousands of transactions and depending on the blockchain, it's just not possible. It will just be ridiculous. So now you can sort of take this like crazy chart and you can turn it into a nice. The transactions are still there as they are here, but it creates, the shortest path and things like that, just to make it very easy. So when we go to court, for example, we can show that to a judge and a jury, and and it's pretty straightforward what's happened. So it just makes it easier. So another way they get their they cluster their data. So they just so one's common ownership identification. If addresses frequently interact with each other, they'll assume that has a relationship, and then they'll cluster that together. They often use heuristics as well, so they look for patterns and relationships, and then they'll put that together. And change addresses is another. Transactions involve change a lot of times, and it's normally sent to a new address, but it's still controlled by that same user. So they account for that, and then they link the addresses belonging to the same person. And again, exchange withdrawals and deposits, they have a pool. Cryptocurrency exchanges, they have a pool of addresses to manage deposits and withdrawals. And again, they can cluster those and then identify those that are attributed to that specific exchange. The only downside with the blockchain tools is they are super expensive. Other than that, they're great.
Yeah, thanks. So, sort of red flags that we're looking for when we're looking on chain, using, for example, Crystal Intelligence, is large or sudden transfers of funds, or even the opposite, smaller transaction funds. Effectively, anything looks outside of the normal. If I'm going to send funds to Scott, it will go one to one. If it's being broken down and sent across multiple different addresses but coming to the same endpoint, that looks odd. Anything that looks like it's trying to make our life difficult when we're coming looking, it sort of stands out. And certainly same with like transactions with multiple parties, and certainly using the attribution from the intelligence from Crystal Intelligence. If there's any transactions, I sort of mentioned before, either received or sent that are from known entities, especially if they've been sanctioned, for example, that's a massive red flag. Okay, if you've suddenly received funds from someone who's on a sanctions list, that stands out. Okay, and that can come from a number of different type of entities, what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, to various terrorism financing as well, is attributed, and we can see that. And again, something we can then evidence in court to say, yeah, this wallet in particular has been interacting with these sanctioned entities. That is very incredibly suspicious to us, and especially if we see multiple of these across various wallets being used to move stolen funds and that sort of thing. It may also assist and give us an idea who may be behind that theft in particular.
Also, where to start. Generally, you'll get given a wallet address. Not much good without, but we'll go into other ways after that. But basically, what you want to do is you want to create a basic timeline. If you're going to speak to law enforcement, they prefer chronological event mapping, just to track the key moments. We then move on to analyzing the wallets and transactions. So we just trace the origin and the movement of the funds, and we'll go into an example of that as well. Using the tools, etc. The other part would be gathering open source intelligence. So it's not just the case of using the tool. There's other things you can do to attribute addresses to bad actors. And then the next step would be to summarize that in a formal report contact the involved parties and provide the evidence to the law enforcement or the law firm or whoever you're working with. And that's for the beginning.
Excellent. So quite often we'll be given, an investigation, law firm will come to us or victim will come to us and say, this has happened. However, they might not necessarily have the full address or hash, or they're not quite sure, or stuff gets sent to us and stuff, partially blurred out and that sort of thing. And we're not quite sure. So we a lot of the time is we need those sort of start points to kick off the investigation. So we have to find the addresses and hashes, but there's various different ways of going around it, whether it be working with the victims to get the right readout from their exchange or their wallet to say, okay, this is what you sent. So then there's also a couple of other services out there which will assist. If you put in a partial address, it will search and then find what could well be the sort of the remaining parts, but then to sort of throw out there and begin investigating. And also same with sort of date, time. They had a rough idea when the transaction took place. That may well assist depending on the blockchain and that sort of thing. But we will work extensively with the law firm or the victims to get those start points out so we can kick off the investigation.
Yeah, so when you only have part of the address, and this happens a lot as well, might only get the first 5 digits of an address or first 10 or whatever. I mean, obviously it has to be at least 5, I believe, depending on which method you use. But there's quite a few ways you can do this. You can use blockchain explorers. Most of these now, like Etherscan, Blockchair, BTC Scan, they support partial searches. And all you do is you enter the bit that you do know into it, and hopefully it will find the correct match or a possible match, which you can then check and verify if it is the right one. But again, as well mentioned, if you've got dates, times, amounts and stuff, obviously it makes it easier as well. You could also cross-reference that with open source intelligence tools like Maltego, GraphSense, to see if there's any related transactions. There's also a few websites out there like Wallet Explorer and Crypto Chains, I think it's called. And again, you just put on the bottom there, chainscryptoid.info, one I've used for years. Just it covers a lot of different blockchains. Put the first few digits in, and it 9 times out of 10 it's given me the full address, which I can then use to begin the tracing. We're just going to talk a little bit about open source intelligence.
Sure. So open source intelligence plays a big part in the investigation phase, not only to evidence if we're going to court to show that fraud was taking place. For example, it's a fake trading platform. We'll tear apart the websites being used and just show that it is fake. But also, we're trying to identify the persons behind it. And there's other avenues off chain that we could potentially go down to assist in that. Also, from the open source side of things with crypto, is each wallet address is put it into Google. Has it appeared elsewhere other than blockchain explorers? Has somebody been talking about it? Has it been a social media post? Is it on a Reddit forum? Is it on a darknet marketplace? Is there anything else out there that might help your investigation just from a simple basic Google search of that wallet address? It could be any wallet address within the chain from the start to the finish and that sort of thing. And also there may be sort of previous data leaks and that sort of thing, which may show further intelligence around a wallet address. And just anything to assist in unmasking that effectively on its own is, it's just a bunch of alphanumeric characters. Can we try and identify the person or persons behind such through searches as basic as Google, or out there using a bunch of from low pay to expensive OSINT tools, depending on your sort of budget.
Cool. Yeah, so we're now going to go through a quick case example using temporal analysis, which is something Rob and I use all the time. It's generally the first sort of way that we would look at stuff to see what's happened. So just a quick overview of temporal analysis, and I'll keep it short. It's just basically detecting transaction patterns, is then linking those patterns to real events. So, you could match blockchain timestamps with deposits, withdrawals to track fund movement. Ransomware payments often happen soon after the demands, adding attribution. Large transactions might align with news or social media events, so hinting at market manipulation. Another way is identifying linked wallets. So closely timed transactions between multiple wallets suggest they belong to the same entity. Then there's coordinated cash outs. And then around the dormant wallets. So after a lot of hacks, the funds will just sit in a unknown wallet, could be for years. But then all of a sudden, there could be a large transaction from an old wallet, and then that would signal the start of the laundering. And then again, the same. So transfer to exchanges from an inactive wallet. Again, that would suggest liquidation attempts. But basically, the short of it is we'd look for an input and then a similar output, and then we would say, based on various variables, that it's definitely linked, or it's within that amount of funds being moved.
So we go. So
Yours off, Toby.
so we're just going to do a bit of a case study here, an example whereby small amount of Bitcoin has gone into a wallet here, and straight away is the first thing we'll do, as I mentioned before, is take a look at that wallet and see if there's any links to crypto exchanges, anything else to assist in our initial assessment of what has happened. Now these bad guys have received 0.0149 Bitcoin, and the aim here is to then sort of work out, okay, what happened next, and using temporal analysis, Scott then can sort of explain how we then follow that crypto.
Yeah, so initially, we know, because obviously we've spoken to the victim and they've told us that they paid the 0.0149 Bitcoin into the scammer's wallet address. And as you can see from that visualization, and then on the transfers list here, this lists all the transfers involved with this entity here, this wallet address. That would normally show as a Bitcoin address, but because we've labeled it as involved in a scam, it now shows as an entity instead of its actual Bitcoin address. But this is the list you'd get, and and with this one, I believe there was something like 204 transactions involved. So you'd have to, instead of having to look through 204 transactions, we can see that 0.149's come in here, and then pretty much a short while after, the exact same amount has gone out. So based on that, it's pretty safe to assume that it's the same amount of funds, regardless of all these other amounts that have come in and gone out. So and the reasons that we reckon that is, same amount, short period of time between the input and output. So let's click on this button here, which would then give us the information for where it went next. And as you can see here, it splits into two, and we'll just go into more detail on the next page.
Thanks. As we can see here on the right-hand side, so we've pressed the little button, as Scott mentioned, and it's then populated onto the visualization that next outbound transaction next in time. And we can see there that 0.0027 Bitcoin has gone to a crypto exchange called Block. And that's the point. Any crypto exchange we hit, that's the sort of, we stop there. That's the sort of limiter of exploitation. That's where we then start to steer the lawyers or the law enforcement to say, okay, funds have gone there, therefore they've been deposited to that exchange. There will be a person behind that, holding owner of that account. And then after that, we can then sort of see that 0.012 is continuing on also. So the transaction has been split into two, into a new wallet, and that's where then Scott will take you through what happens next.
Yep, so the chase is on. So as we dive deeper, we see that 0.012 was received into the wallet here, and then sent out. An amount of 0.010 is then sent on to Block, as we can see here. And when you get to this exchange, at that point you trace no further, and we'll explain why in a bit. but then an amount sent to Block. So, we'd speak to Block and see what information they could give us, because once it's gone in there, only they know what's happened to it. But we still have the remainder of 0.0017. So, which is this button here. So if we push this button here, let's see what happens next.
So effectively, it's gone round in a circle. It's gone back to the original scammer's wallet address. And this is a common method that we see where the scammers try and hide what they're doing. Send stuff in a circle to sort of throw us off track. But we'll have a look at the scammer's wallet to then see if we can work out where that 0.0017 is going next.
Yeah. So after that 017 was sent to the original scammer wallet, we see that they send 0.33 Bitcoin. And again, we use temporal analysis. So that 33 is the combination of the 17 that we just received and another payment of 15 that was sent on a different one. And the reason we say that's correct is because the amounts equal the 33 being sent. There's a short period of time between the transfers. There's no other funds paid in between these two inputs and outputs. And then as we look down the transfer list, so that would scroll down 204 transactions. I could see that all the previous amounts that were inputted were outputted very quickly, but basically leaving the balance as zero every time. The big finish.
Yeah. So as we see, the scammers have split the 0.0033 into two outputs, with 0.00035 Bitcoin going to Binance and the remainder of 0.00293 going to Block. Now, in the entirety of the tracing, we'll look and see how we action on the intelligence. What do we do now? First, we speak to law enforcement or the law firm involved to let them know what's happened. Speak to Binance and Block, both crypto exchanges, whether it be the law enforcement or lawyers. And then we look to seek what information they have behind the persons behind that transaction, whether it be through the official process through the court, and get disclosure orders. And then from that information, we then use that to sort of continue the investigation. It's worth noting at this point, the investigation does not stop with the tracing to an exchange. There are many things that can be leveraged to enhance this, such as open source intelligence, digital investigations around fiat currency, property, etc. Once we've received that disclosure, we understand who is behind that accounts or those accounts on Block and Binance that received the stolen Bitcoin from the victim.
Cool.
Hopefully that'll be useful for you.
Yeah, and the last slide, you'll all be glad to know. Expert reports. This is something Rob and I do all the time and have done for some years. So the point of the Crypto Expert Report is it helps trace the blockchain transactions, investigate the fraud, and support legal cases. So these reports are used by law enforcement, regulators, and lots of law firms that we deal with daily. And it's used, to track the stolen funds, analyze suspicious activity, but it's also, we also use it for, like, say, bank audits, insolvency practitioners, lots of different reasons. So, and there's just a few key parts that you need to put into the crypto report, and it's, ones like the case background. So just explain our purpose, what the scope of work is. Then it's the transaction analysis, which is the stuff that we've just shown, showing the funds, why it's there, why we say it's there, and how we attribute that data. Again, then we look for further attribution identification, so any links to exchanges and KYC or whatever other information that might identify that individual or business or platform. And again, using open source intelligence to verify as well. Because there is one, like, a lot of times these, like, scammers and that will use the same username across all platforms. So, pretty bad OPSEC on their part, but it happens, and and they do make mistakes, makes it easier to find. The next part would be the risk and compliance side of things. So we assess transactions for money laundering risks and regulation breaches, and then we finish with the findings and the conclusions. So just summarizing the key evidence in simple terms, we give our expert opinions and then any recommendations if required. So and again common uses for these reports: legal cases, regulatory compliance, civil disputes, forensic accountants, and then why it matters. So expert reports provide clear fact-based insights into crypto transactions, and that helps recover stolen assets, catch criminals, and ensure compliance with financial regulations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. very much, Scott and Rob. That was fantastic. Literally fantastic.
Thank you.
So we have a couple of questions for you in the chat. And from this part, we are also going to transition into the guest lab. And for today's guest lab, we have a few experts in the building as well. Gabrielle Green, who will introduce herself shortly, literally just completed a course with Chainalysis, and she's been raving all over LinkedIn about this asset tracing stuff. And Adila deals with wallet hygiene, and she's always doing presentations and trainings on this sort of area. And Georgette is our partner for Blockchain Lex Group in the UAE. She sits in Abu Dhabi, and she also deals with high net worth individuals around this area. So, Scott, that was fantastic. So, Scott, you could take some of the questions as we prepare for the guest lab session, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, the first one is from Paul Makolaka. How does crypto hacks compare to TradFi hacks?
Yeah, it's like, as I was saying before, it's the same methods and everything's being used. It's just using crypto instead of traditional finance. So it's the same. Like, so for example, if you're looking to move funds, in a traditional bank, they would send it to different accounts. But the only difference in crypto is they're sending it to different wallet addresses instead. But it's the same techniques that are being used. I mean, sure, there's some technical differences, but in essence, it's pretty much using the same stuff to carry out the same tried and tested methods.
And can a cold wallet be hacked even though it's not connected to the internet? I think this
So
happened quite a bit recently, yeah?
I've
Yeah.
I've got some examples where it can take place in a way where it's more through manipulation via sort of spear phishing, where they get you to reveal your seed phrase, and then effectively clone your key to that cold wallet and then steal it that way. That is a huge issue at the minute. I've got a number of cases where they've made a lot of money from doing that type of thing. So it's coming. They're attacking it from a different way, not necessarily traditional trying to hack it as such. It's how do they manipulate the person who controls the wallet to reveal their seed phrase, and then once they've got that, they've got the key, and away they go.
All right, cool. Scott, do you just want to unpin your presentation for now so that the rest of the panelists can
Yeah.
look on the screen? Then there's another question is how do threat actors know that a transaction of a significant amount is about to occur before they attack? And how can we avoid that? So basically, he's asking like, do they just monitor transactions and then when something is about to happen, then they pounce on that wallet, or how do they know?
Yeah. So I've come across recently was they try to identify the actual owner of certain wallet addresses, which they know have got a lot of funds in. And then once they try and identify that, they then do other methods to try and gain access to that wallet to then drain it. I don't know if there's any way they would know when someone's going to send a large amount unless it would have been posted somewhere in the first place. I mean, can you think of anything, Rob, where that would
Yeah, I suppose one
be the case?
possible way is like trying to monitor how Bybit were operating to then try and sort of, you know, snuggle their way in and then manipulate the contracts and then steal it that way. Looking for routines, I suppose, is maybe some sort of thing. Pattern analysis in a way to then ambush at a point of their choosing to try and once they've got everything set up to maybe to steal the funds.
Yeah, so I suppose if they're like keeping an eye on, say, a Binance
Yeah,
deposit wallet, for example, and they
yeah.
know that it transfers out in $10,000 increments or whatever, they could then do something with that to try and spam it or whatever.
Right. There's another question here from Moses. How does the process vary based on the chain? So is the process different, let's say, different from Ethereum and Bitcoin? The asset tracing process, is it the same?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, we use the temporal analysis is the same regardless of what chain it's on. Yeah, sure, some are harder than others, but we'd still employ the same methods and others to attribute it to it.
And okay, now this is my question. So in terms of recovery, are there success cases? Because yesterday we had Lavinia Osborne here with us, and
Yeah.
so her NFT was dissipated, and she traced the chain, but she wasn't able to recover it. I don't know whether it was off-ramped or something else happened, but are there instances where there's actual recovery?
I have, yes, and I actually helped Lavinia on when she first had it stolen, and did the
Oh, right.
initial
Okay.
tracing, and so we could, on chain, we could see the NFT, see it's there, but it just kept getting moved because it wasn't attached to an exchange. Recovery was near impossible. However, with the traditional stuff, we've frozen accounts with assets in, and then been able to get them back to the victims. However, it is very difficult, and it's a tricky space to work in where the criminals are very good and have very well established. And they're not just organized crime groups; they run like businesses from the sheer amount they're making. So, asset recovery, yes, it can work. I have seen it work, but it can be difficult.
Yeah, I think I see one posted today. 500,000 got returned back to a elderly lady that had she'd been scammed out of. So that's a pretty good
Yeah.
result. I know Rob's helped out on a few good recoveries.
All right, cool. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Rob. So if you guys still have time, you could stick around because right now we're just about to transition into what we call the guest lab. So it's sort of a panel session. And we have Gabby, Adila, Georgette, Alessa, and our Evan in the building. So it's just going to be around the same topic. But Adila, you wanted to share something really quick before we go into the panel session? How much time are you looking at, please?
Oh, sure. I have about 10 minutes that I would like to just share about touch on the wallet hygiene with
Right.
everybody. Here, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
So this is just a quick guide, and I will share this with the students about the top 10 things to know about wallet management and cryptocurrency. And some of the things that we spoke about already today included talking about hot versus cold wallets. This is just basically how does your wallet hygiene impact problems like you may have, like you're interfacing with different types of marketplaces, or for that matter, if you're deciding to purchase something out there with your crypto, that affects your wallet hygiene. In fact, there are scoring to your wallets that if you're to be investigated, they do take your wallet score and they consider that kind of like your credit score, and they consider that to see if you are interacting with illicit funds or illicit funding or illicit actors, or shall I say bad actors. And with that, you could be tied to a multitude of scams because you are utilizing a dirty wallet. And when you're utilizing a dirty wallet, that means that the wallet that you're using for transactions, you're just going about and you're not checking the source of the money or the coins that you're getting. You're just going and you're taking the coins out and utilizing your wallet. So you have to be really careful when you are engaging in any type of trade, especially with your digital wallets, because it could be labeled later as not being sanitary, as you know. And basically, this is just to be able to help navigate, now that you have your wallet, what type of things you should look for, what type of things you should be doing. So number one, you should be, careful of whom you're engaging with. Check before you engage and do any type of trade. The second thing is you need to keep track of your actual transactions. Some rules I know specifically in the United States, they want to know, your wallet, what wallet you're utilizing for what transaction. And later it has to be reported like that during tax season. So if you're not keeping up with your wallets, or if you're managing multiple wallets, you need to be able to kind of keep up with that, because basically you are your own compliance executor over your finances. So so when you're operating in a digital space, you have to understand that you're responsible for the transactions that you do. And that's pretty much it. This is just a way to help introduce what that responsibility means, because everybody hears about opening a wallet. Everybody understands how to open a wallet, but now you need to be able to maintain that wallet, and that's key. And that's all I like to tell everybody.
Thank you, Adila. So now we're going to quickly cruise into the panel session. And those who have questions for Adila, you can ask those questions within the panel. So let's start off with Georgette Adonis, all the way in Abu Dhabi. She's already in tomorrow. Aren't you already, Georgette? Has time crossed? Are you in tomorrow already?
Yes, it's 12:14 a.m.
Yo, guys, some fire emojis for Georgette. Like literally, so much love for us. She's in tomorrow already. So fire emojis for Georgette.
Only
And
for you,
Evan,
Brian.
Evan, whereabouts are you right now? Sorry, Georgie. Are you in Hawaii? It's already tomorrow as well?
Me? Yes. Well, today, I don't know, tomorrow, sometime. It's the morning here. So probably tomorrow. Yeah.
So,
Or
guys,
actually the morning, maybe your morning, or your
yeah.
past morning, right?
So let's big up Evan and Georgette for holding it down for us the following day. So, Georgie, let's start with you. Give us a quick introduction and tell us some of the challenges or experiences that you have in your industry. And as an attorney, cross-border attorney, what sort of remedies do you advise your clients on?
Thank you, Brian, and very great presentation, guys. I must say, very engaging and informative as well. So I'm Georgette Adonis Roberts. I'm a dual qualified barrister, or an international lawyer, so to speak, providing services across regulatory, compliance, innovation, and law. I have been practicing for over 10 years now. And more recently, I've been working with crypto exchanges, high net worth individuals who are looking to expand in the fintech space, and structuring, corporate structuring, regulatory compliance. And my experience spans across various jurisdictions. So that's from the UK to the Caribbean, BVI, to Singapore, Australia, and more recently, the UAE. And I sit here more from the perspective of legal and compliance in terms of helping companies get regulated here and also provide services to this local market. But naturally, crypto is cross-border. And for that reason, I work with people like Brian and various partners across the globe. So that's my introduction. So just in terms of work that I've done in the past, so my heart more is with regards to legal and compliance, and that is basically to protect my clients and also the clients of my clients. So for instance, if you were to register on Binance, there are a lot of legal requirements and regulatory requirements that an exchange like Binance would need to comply with to ensure that your assets are safe and to ensure that they act within certain frameworks. So gone are the days when crypto was unregulated and it was really the dark web and there was this negative connotation. As we have seen, there has been a lot of regulation and a lot of institutional buy-in to make sure that the sector does not have a negative connotation and that people's assets are safe and people understand what crypto is and how they can actually benefit from this asset. So my hat basically is to train compliance teams in order to have AML checks, customer due diligence checks, and also just monitoring transactions that come in and out of the exchange. Also, on top of that, managing regulatory requirements and also litigation from the perspective of risks, or for instance, asset tracing or suspicious activity where we may identify money laundering and fraud.
And Georgie, what are some of the things that you have seen that, like Scott and Rob were saying, they raise red flags. So how do you handle such red flags?
Yes, so naturally you might see players trying to get onboarded because obviously they need to off ramp, and through the exchanges they need to create an account or register. So they might try to bypass KYC rules or try to hide their identity because obviously identity is through e-verification. So you might see people trying to register different accounts, so they could have multiple accounts on the exchange, or you might see people potentially having mules. Because one of the things which is very interesting is that there is the video recording, and sometimes people are not aware that the video records before it actually starts. So you might see some things happening before the recording and after the recording that might be alarming. And one interesting case was where we saw a client being coerced or forced to register, more or less with a weapon. And we had to report that to the regulator. So that's one of the things that we've noticed. Also, with regards to transaction monitoring, you see certain behaviors in terms of transactions being sent to wallets that are tainted. So it's quite interesting stuff that you see from the lens of a legal and compliance perspective.
Thanks, Georgie. Now, Gabby, we're going to head straight to you and then back to Evan and Yumika and Palesa. So, Gabby, you just got really deep into this asset recovery world. So are you kind of aligned with what Rob and Scott do? And what are some of the things that you've seen and you're like, something needs to be done to change this?
Yeah, I will say that I have worked adjacent to the space for a while in crypto compliance, but I've not been the one doing investigations. And so for those who are hoping to learn on blockchain investigations or digital asset tracing, I know that it can be very overwhelming in terms of there's a lot of information out there. And I actually just opened up Scott's link that he dropped to all of the open source intelligence resources. That kind of information is a cheat sheet. And so I will say to you all, as a learner, there are free tools that you can use to get into this space without having to necessarily go through like the Chainalysis Reactor course or others until you get further down the way. So to sort of answer that question in a way, Brian, I would say maybe three quick, easy steps you can do is check out blockchain analytics companies' websites. They have a lot of free resources. If you want to start tracing your own transactions, even from today, you can sign up for Metasleuth, that you can create free accounts on there. And then third, on the wallet screening side, I actually just spoke to the folks at Verify Wallet today, and I'll send you all just a link to the website where you can use a free wallet screening tool. So those are kind of 3 free places to start. And so as someone trying to break down this investigations tracing world myself, I found those free starting places to be very helpful.
All right, cool. Thanks, Gabby. So have you encountered any investigations yourself or challenges yourself, or you're still,
Yeah. So for myself, so I'm still a learner, so I am working every day to trace investigations and learn. And the challenge is that there are so many tools to use. There's so many different types of crypto assets and so many different types of tactics when it comes to money laundering on chain. So I think the challenge is the information overload there.
Right. Thanks, Gabby. Adila. Adila?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, I had to step away
Right.
for a second.
So, do you want to tell us the process of, let's say, a scam has happened? So when someone comes to you, because they know you're always the client's first port of call, so the relationship between you and someone like and people, experts like Scott and Rob, how does it work?
Well, what I would do is initially, when they come to me with a problem, let's say I had 2 individuals that came to me with the problem that they're actually scammed for a role, or they're applying for a role, but the job role told them they had to utilize a wallet and there was crypto involved. So already it sounded shifty and shady to me.
Mhm.
I took in intake to describe exactly what occurred and, basically the storyline. I made a report with that storyline. And then what I would do is I would run it to first to our leadership, like the FBI, because we have the FBI site that we would turn in information for this.
Mhm.
Then we would report it there, and then I would let the client know to get law enforcement involved so that it's reported across the board. And what we will try to do is find, depending on the individual's budget, or exactly when they're trying to get recovery done, we would find a Scott, a team like that, to try to put them into a better situation of recovery. And this has to happen before 72 hours of a report, because the more time we lose in getting it reported, the less time you can, the less you'll be able to get back your assets. So basically, try to get reported. I try not to ask for anything up front from the client. There'll
Mhm.
be a deal between us. If they get it or if they don't, it doesn't matter. My goal is to get the client to the right people, and that's what I would do. Open my resources and get them to the right network of individuals that can actually do the recovery after I do the intake and the reporting and matching up the wallet. So basically making the role of investigating what exactly occurred for Scott's team a little easier for them, because then we have all the wallet accounts. We have what happened, and then they would be able to put it through a system to be able to kind of see what happened with the wallets and those crypto addresses.
Okay, thanks, Adila. So, Palesa, I know you've had an experience with assets being stolen. Would you want to share the process you went through to try to recover your assets and whether you're successful or not? Then we will pass the mic to Rob and Scott to take us through like what happens when a client comes to them and there's it's significant assets and they want to go through the court process. So from the client to Scott, sorry, from the client to Adila to Scott to the court of law.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Rob, Scott, Georgette, and Gabriel. Adila, thank you for the presentation, guys. We really appreciate this. Brian, I didn't lose my assets. I actually got scammed. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so in Africa, we're actually exposed to this pig butchery scams. So a lot of it. And the painful part is that they use people who are in leadership, kind like me. They use us and tell us that if we get more people, then we'll be leading the group and then we'll be getting incentives, So you can understand that I didn't just get myself scammed. I actually got my community scammed too. So you can understand how that actually reflected on me as a lawyer. It was really bad. You understand? And the only thing I was just doing was just trying to get some financial opportunities out there, and then I just got scammed. So the problem is in my country, there's no way you can actually trace anything here. Cryptocurrency is not recognized at all. So even our central bank actually made this statement that if you're involved in cryptocurrency and you lose your money, don't come to us, don't go to any bank, because we don't know anything about it and we're not involved with anything related to cryptocurrency. So you can even try to go to the police, but still they'll just tell you gave this person your money willingly. So we cannot help you. So that's basically the story of my country, and it's still the same, but hopefully things will change with time.
Okay. So, Georgie, do you access clients like Palesa directly, or are you strictly corporate? And Scott, do you access, and Rob, do you access clients like Palesa, or are you strictly corporate?
We Yeah, sorry, so you go first.
Yeah, so just to answer your question, Brian, mostly corporate, but we do touch individuals, especially if they are clients that are part or clients of the corporate. But we would more look from the lens of us being scammed or the exchange being scammed, and we would work with regulators. But the story that we've heard is one that obviously has caused a lot of backlash for the crypto sector. And the fact that people like Rob and Scott have to, work so hard shows that, there's still a lot of work to be done and criminals will always find loopholes. But I think what we need to do is focus on the positives of crypto and, the good use cases that it has. Criminals have tried to make us think that it's something that criminals use. But especially here in the UAE, there's been a lot of adoption of crypto. Conversely, it's a very crypto-friendly jurisdiction. There are at least 5 regulators who regulate the space, and plenty service providers who help to make it something that is legitimate. So my perspective is, from a corporate perspective and an individual's perspective, you need to know what jurisdictions you're dealing with, the corporate you're dealing with. Do your due diligence as well. If something sounds too good to be true, it normally is. And, the best of us have been scammed. So it's not something that you should really, take personally, but it's something to learn from and educate people. So I think there's a lot of need for education, wallet hygiene, as the team has said, and just understanding the technology and understanding the asset, not just the money that you can make from it, so to speak.
All right, thanks, Georgie. Rob and Scott?
Yeah, so same. We take both. We deal with private individuals, we deal with law firms, and insolvency practitioners, and assist law enforcement with disruption. We'll look at anything. So we take all. What I would say in terms of being scammed, I wouldn't feel too bad about it. I've dealt with university professors at Oxford, Cambridge. They've been caught out as well. The supposedly highly intelligent professors, but it just shows you how much effort they put in to get out. I mean, when I was in the fraud squad years ago, they'd only spend a few weeks or maybe a month or two trying to win you over. Whereas now they'll spend years trying to get that confidence before they try and get any money out of you. And that's the way it's going forward. I mean, and again, about the feeling bad, this is why I don't think calling it pig butchering is a great idea, because I think it shames the victims, makes them feel even worse. I just don't think it's very helpful. It's just an investment fraud or a romance fraud. So I don't really like that language, but I know some people like to use it because they've made a name for themselves out of it. And they only use it because that's what the original Chinese scammers called it. That's what it translated to. So don't really agree with it. But in terms of how we would deal with stuff when it comes in, I mean, hopefully you'd have a wallet address or something like that you'd have paid the funds to. And then we would do some initial tracing to see what's happened, and we don't really, we don't charge at that point. We would only charge when a report is needed, So if, it could be either an intelligence report that you need to make to give a notice letter to an exchange to ask, is there funds in there? Can we do anything with that? Can we freeze? Can we return? And then again, we will do expert reports as well. And again, that's the only times it becomes sort of chargeable, and then the money side comes involved. Neither Rob or I, we're not salesmen. We're not selling cars, and we're not trying to, rip people off, and because there are a few firms out there that will just charge people 3,000 or whatever, give them a really bad report which they can't do anything with, and we don't work with that. We do a lot of pro bono stuff as well, so you get a lot of people with, say, a lower level loss. They're not all going to be 300 grand plus. You get some people might have only lost a couple of grand, but to them that that's a lot of money, so it has to be in proportion. So, and for those ones, we'll just give them a bit of information, and then hopefully they can then go to the exchange and hopefully get some positivity out of it. And that's the way that we've always done things. But I'll pass to Rob to deal with the second part of it and what happens after that.
Yeah, certainly, and yeah, we work with victims around the world who come to England and Wales for jurisdiction wise, quite often, because the scammers will report to be in the UK, whether it be shell companies here or even just using a +44 phone number or basically piggybacking off an address, but they're not actually here. But that means we can then still go through the courts here, and we've worked with victims all around the world. Now, a lot of our work is the blockchain analytics and the OSIP we've talked about. What we haven't spoken about is actually working with the victims and ensuring that they're okay with this, and as they're going through, help them going through the process. And then one of the biggest things is trying to stop them getting further scammed and further investing, because the bad guys will come back in different forms and pretend to be fake versions of me. I've had my own profile cloned. So there's fake versions of Rob Moore out there scamming people right now. And I've had to force people to say, look, that's not me. I'm not recovering your assets, and that sort of thing. I pretend to be the police, the FBI, fake law firms, we call it double scams. They can be double, triple. So a lot of work is to try and ensure that the victims are protected, their own digital footprint, and their own profiles and everything are safe and secure as can be, to stop the scammers and the fraudsters coming back in different ways and ensure that they don't lose any more funds. Which is a continuing process. And even years later, I've got clients who were scammed 3-4 years ago, and they're still coming back. As of this morning, I've seen another example of a victim who's been defrauded a lot of money. Bad guys coming back pretending to be, hey, we can get your money back, and this sort of thing, spinning up a brand new website, doing a domain. Is too easy for them, but it works. So the victim management is a big part of our job, as well as doing the crypto and the OSIT and everything else in the expert report.
Thanks, Scott. So I'm going to come to Evan, Keneal, and Yumika. Actually, Yumika works around blockchain security as well, and Keneal, his day job is with the IRS, and Evan, he's an all-round academic extraordinaire. So the three of
Yeah, I
you,
got a lot to say too, despite not,
Evan,
being an
what's your
expert
take on
in
this?
this field. Yeah, so I'm not an expert. I'd love to have my cousin come on. She's actually the vice president of investigations for Chainalysis for many years. And so she's kind of worked a lot on the North Korean hacks with the Lazarus Group and tracking down these transactions. But I guess the first thing I can say is there's the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, really kind of knowing what is out there to pay attention to is important, right? So you can use Scam Sniffer, for instance, if you're playing around in the Web3 space. Scam Sniffer is a good platform to check out. And for instance, one of the big attacks that's been happening recently is with Phantom Wallet, where users are being basically, there's a pop-up coming up that's telling users to update their wallet, and when they do it, they enter their seed phase, and all of a sudden their wallet's been empty, right? Or even job advertisements, right? Like there's a company out there, Medify. They change their name all the time. They look legit. They got all the people there. They'll say, oh yeah, hey, you want a job in Web3? Let's have an interview. Download this software so we can have a chat. And next thing you know, you're getting ransomwared, right? So ransomware is a big one. That's kind of where it all started, actually, is ransomware, right? I don't know if you remember, just a few years back, hospitals, all kinds of things were getting ransomware, and BTC was the main payment to get your stuff back. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of these big operations, they're operating out of countries that there's not a legal jurisdiction, at least for the United States, like Russia, North Korea, Iran. On top of that, it's kind of, there's so many things I could say on this, but I think number one is, if you look at, for instance, the Bitcoin white paper, or actually, sorry, not the Bitcoin white paper, but a post by Satoshi Nakamoto in one of the forums years back, he said, it'd be the best sort of system would be one where, your gold turns to lead, right? So if something is stolen, if your tokens are stolen, they can immediately be blacklisted, right? And this is something that, I think is important probably going into the future, especially when it comes to these sort of large state actors, where you're able to, immediately freeze these tokens, and maybe even, and there are attempts out there to create ways to retrieve these tokens. So they would, turn back to gold. They would turn the lead in the hands of criminals, and once you retrieve them, they're back. They're gold again. So this is something that's coming, I think, down the pipeline in the next few years, where, node operators would be legally bound to retrieve coins that have been stolen. And people say, oh, well, how can you do that? It's, decentralized, right? Well, I mean, is it really decentralized? To a degree, sure. But, the decentralization, we can go into all this. It happens at the protocol level, right? Not the node level. So nodes operate in countries that are, have legal systems, right? So if you're a node operator and you're in the United States, you're still bound by the laws of the United States. And so, or in Europe, or in, whatever country you're operating out of. So there are legal ways that, node operators could be required to retrieve stolen tokens.
Right.
But this is, still very theoretical. It hasn't been applied yet in reality. But, coming down the pipeline, it would probably be a necessity at some point, particularly when we're talking about, a full scale blockchain implementation into like the existing system, right? Like, no country is going to allow their dollar or whatever to be tokenized on a blockchain, and then it can just be taken like that. So these are, important sort of things that, will need to be worked out before we ever see like a true global adoption.
All right, cool. Let's hold it there for now, Evan. Keneal, where does your team come in as the IRS, and who do you deal with?
So, I mean, I just want to actually just touch on, I will answer that and just say, Evan, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think this is going back to what our theory here is at Crypto Mondays, Blockchain Lex, is that in order to have adoption, education is key again. I know we keep saying that, I'm gonna belabor it. And essentially that when you create these policies and procedures, I think that's what we're looking for is, these countries adopt true blockchain technology. So at this point, if you're calling the IRS, FBI, DEA, I'm pretty sure it's your assets are long lost. But I think at this point, you're going after the individuals or the groups that are pushing these scams. Our goal is to work with our partners, whether it's either the financial institution where individuals are trying to offload these cryptocurrencies, or other blockchain analytic companies where we work with them hand in hand to identify or trace where who the benefactors are. So even if you've lost this money, we've been able to follow the crypto, so to say, and identify where it's going, who benefited, and who tried to turn the crypto into fiat currency. So that's why we need all of our partners, and we have to work hand in hand, because without these key ingredients, essentially the bad guys always get away. But we've been very successful in working with all these blockchain analytics companies and identified, who the perpetrators are, what tools they're utilizing to move the cryptocurrencies or tokens through different networks. But without these partners, again, public-private partnerships, without them, we are essentially useless, because you can't. It's hard to change to identify these assets without their help as well.
Thanks, Keneal. Yumika?
Yeah, and from our points of view, we look at more proactive measures as opposed to reactive measures, because there's a high chance that when the funds are lost, with a lot of these incidents. The adversaries who have the capabilities or the equipment to carry out these attacks are very experienced in terms of using some of these schemes like Tornado Cash or some of these mixers, and in terms of yeah, so we look at more proactive measures, which involves more distribution of private key shares with MPC and multi-sig wallets, but also key rotation, also having policy measures in place, like you have transaction limits, whitelisted addresses, blacklisted addresses as well. So that's just more of like a proactive approach in preventing the incidents in the first place.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just going to focus on the audience for 1 second. If there's any member of the audience who has a question at this point, just turn on your mic and ask it, because we're about to go into like the takeaways of the session with the panelists. So if you have any burning question, you can just turn on your mic now and ask it, please. And raise your hand as well if you're if there's many of you, sorry.
Hello, good day, everyone.
Yes.
My name is Mama Shaibu from Nigeria.
Yes.
I am just too curious to know how the lawyers in the House were able to transition from the traditional law practice to Web3 or blockchain law issues. I'm very curious to know that. People like Georgia might be able to respond to this. And secondly, we are having issue here in Nigeria. I don't know, but there is a big development in terms of cryptocurrency and blockchain adoption, because the federal government is getting interested in the whole crypto issue, because the Economic and Financial Crime Commission are being trained by an organization called Convexity to understand the complexities of the blockchain technology and how to trace cryptos via blockchain, because most of the terrorism happening around here are mostly have been proven to be, the funds have been proven to be sent via cryptocurrency and all that. So is this platform really provides us with this opportunity to adopt cryptocurrency and embrace it, to learn more of the dynamics of it. So back to my question, I would like to know how the judges transition from traditional law practice to Web3 and blockchain lawyers.
Georgie, I guess that's your question.
Yes, so sure. So
And Falaise as
right,
well.
I started my career in traditional law, so civil litigation, and that transformed into financial services. So I started working with banks, and then that went into fintech. And that is when I started getting an interest in crypto. So a lot of the legacy systems we're seeing are changing. So technology is moving very quickly. And because of that, there are a lot of services and products that are being developed. And because of that, regulators now need to provide laws and regulations to have some sort of structure, because the laws were not designed for those sorts of services and products. So for me, how I transitioned was by working with companies that were actually thinking ahead, which were very innovative. And based on that, I learned a lot about the technology. I learned a lot about how things worked. And then I was able to apply my legal knowledge in that space. And what you also do, you look at what is happening in the world in terms of where the world is moving to, for instance, AI. And you speak to various sorts of techpreneurs and people who have various ideas. And then you see how you could use your legal skills to help them. So in terms of transitioning, it is based on, I think, a passion and an understanding and a need to learn about the sector. And then once you learn that, a lot of the skills that you learn in traditional law can be used in those new areas of law, for instance. And what you can do is also help shape policy, help speak to regulators to help them understand, and help set precedents to make sure that, you know, these services and products remain within a certain framework. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but I think you're on the right path in terms of joining boot camps like this, speaking to people in the space in terms of getting knowledge and insights, and understanding what skills you have and how that could actually help somebody in the fintech space or the crypto space.
Thanks, Georgie. Palesa, you want to chime in on that?
Oh, for sure, Brian. Just to add on what Georgette is saying is like, I will just make an example of how law can be applied in a cryptocurrency case. For example, we have to actually where we have to start is to recognize cryptocurrency as property. That's where we have to start, basically. And then after recognizing it as property, and now we can actually protect it under the laws. You understand? So firstly, countries have to recognize cryptocurrency as property. And then now, in case where you lose your Bitcoin and then you want to recover it, you can actually go to court and then ask the court to protect you in a way like recover your Bitcoin. You understand? So in that way, the law will be in a way changed to cover you. You see, because now this Bitcoin is recognized as your property. You understand? So
Thanks.
that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thanks, Palesa. So it extends the
meaning of property.
It extends the landscape to be able to factor in. Speaking of legal landscapes, I have a question for our people in stateside. So Gabby and Keneal and Evan as well. How are the courts in the US doing the asset recovery process? Because in the UK, we have that sort of regime going on where, you know, a client goes to Scott, or a solicitor like Matt comes to Scott and Rob, and then they go to court and do the whole process. And a similar thing applies in Dubai with Georgette. Georgette, correct me if I'm wrong. Your regime is similar to the British one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Keneal and Gabby, how does it work on your end?
Oh, this is actually easy one. So I'll start off at least. So we have very clear asset forfeiture laws. So as much as we were talking about tracing crypto, so it is treated as property in the US. And as you probably have heard, the US is a huge holder of Bitcoin because of illicit crimes that have been stopped and has been recovered. What happens is that if these bad guys transfer the Bitcoin or any other type of crypto asset to an exchange, that we could submit a court document saying, hey, they've committed a crime and these are proceeds of the crime. We could seize them or take possession. And essentially, if there isn't any more crypto or any type of tokens or anything, any type of property that's left, we take the same value that's attributed to that dollar value and we go after their other assets. So it could be their house, their yacht, you know, their paycheck, whatever it is, to make up for the difference in the harm that may have caused. So we do have proper laws and procedures to cover asset forfeiture as far as criminal proceeds, as well as civil as well, to any type of criminal or civil act.
Right.
So we do have an easy authority to take that.
Right.
So
and does it come under the jurisdiction of the SEC or DOJ, FBI, who does the whole
It depends. That does get convoluted. So since I'm IRS criminal investigation, so a majority of our cases are prosecuted with Department of Justice, as most cases are. So just to keep it simple, if we're talking about a purely criminal matter, Department of Justice. So as investigators of different crimes, each agency you just named have different authority. Obviously, DEA drugs, IRS financial crimes, FBI political corruption. If there's a financial harm in any of those crimes, we tend to work with either our civil internal counterparts or the criminal Department of Justice, who are prosecutors and attorneys that go in front of a judge, lay out a case that I either swear to the facts of that, and then either have that asset seized or identified as a substitute
Right.
But
Thank
yeah, in general, for the sake of the answer, yeah, Department of Justice in general.
All right, cool. Thanks, Kinil. So we're going to take one last question, and then we'll go back to the panelists to wrap up. So Ado or Edo, your hand is up. You want to unmute your mic and ask your question quickly?
Hello, good
Sorry,
evening,
Edo,
everyone.
is it you who has a child with you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. All right.
So my name is Anas. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anas Ado.
Yes,
I'm from Nigeria.
yes.
So I just need some clarification about two things.
Yes.
In consensus algorithm, proof of work,
Yes.
there are miners who solve mathematical puzzles.
Yes.
So are they the same as Note?
Evan, I guess that's you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in proof of work, yeah, like, you know, a miner is a node. That's right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so your question has been clarified. Okay, cool. Cheers. So now let's do a wrap up with the panelists, starting with Rob and Scott, who started off the session. So what are your takeaways from the session you presented today, and based on the questions from the audience and the panel we've just had as well?
Yeah, shall I go first? Yeah, thanks for having us on. Hope that was useful for everyone there. Just a bit of a snapshot into our world. It's ever evolving and ever tricky, but it's a fascinating world to work in. And certainly, if there seems to be a lot of questions about how to get into this space as an investigator, reach out to myself and Scott, and a bit of a look forward to. We're both looking at creating an accredited training platform and course that isn't just linked to a certain specific blockchain tool. To give more of a sort of a holistic approach to it, but also get a decent qualification out of it. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob. Scott?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Just remember, it's not just the tracing. You know, it doesn't begin and end with the tracing. You know, the end goal is that they cash out. You know, and then at that point, you need to use traditional investigation methods and requests. And then secondly, like I said before, don't feel too bad if you get scammed. You know, it's one of them things. And like I say, much cleverer people than me have been scammed over silly things. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Gabby?
Sure. So if you want to get into the industry, one, you got to have passion. Two, you got to accept that things are going to change and move quickly. And three, that means that you can be a part of it really easily because no one has all the answers for what's going on. This is all new territory for most of us, and there's changes happening every day. So if you want to be the expert, you know, go out there, take the ownership, do it, you know, create your own research. Don't let having the job stop you from learning and posting about it.
Thank you, Gabby. Georgie?
Thanks. I think everybody mentioned it already. Asset tracing is one thing, but obviously recovery is what is more important, trying to get your asset back. But I think using due diligence, being very aware, education, all of these are very important aspects to make sure that we stop criminals and, you know, digital assets, virtual assets, crypto has the true essence of what it can be. So I think as stewards of the space, if we're all passionate about the space, we need to see and think about how we can all come together to educate each other and also to teach one another how to be better stewards.
Thank you.
I think that's my takeaway.
Thank you very much. Palesa?
Oh, Brian, you call me there. I feel like everybody has actually shared everything. So what I'm just gonna do right now is to encourage my brothers and sisters in Africa. Guys, this is the moment that we take this chance and run with it, guys. Because we've always been left behind and we're like a charity case. So I feel like this is the moment we join the world as it is moving, okay? Let's not get left behind, guys. So let's work together, build those communities, and let's share the knowledge. And then, believe me, this is the time that we move with the world, right? Africa is
Yeah.
moving. Yeah.
Palesa. Evan?
Yeah, I think there's not a doubt in my mind that, you know, where blockchain can do the most good is in Africa. And you know, I think that it's really a place where the people can create an amazing future. So, you know, take this opportunity and go for it. And, you know, whether it's in law enforcement or in the legal system or as an entrepreneur, you know, find some way that you can contribute and you can build out what will be, you know, hopefully an amazing future for Africa, you know. It's very exciting.
Thank you, Evan. Yumika?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say most of the things you see around you only existed a couple of decades ago. Like if you see Bitcoin, for example, it was only launched in 2009. So like everyone basically learned what they learned in like maybe 5 years, 8 years max. And yeah, so don't feel intimidated, just be committed to learn as much as you can. And yeah, just give it your all and it'll go by quick.
Yo, bless you, Mika. Keneal?
Yeah, you've all said it and said it so well. The most I could add is, yeah, there's gonna be good and bad and ugly with these new technologies. That just keep fighting on. We've got this. Education is definitely among the most important things. Teach thy neighbor, and hopefully adoption becomes the standard. So good luck, everyone.
Yo, Keneal, there's this thing you always say, teach one, each one.
Edu-
Yo,
each-
bro, drop it, man.
You
Drop
always
that
butcher
thing.
it. You
Yo,
always-
drop that thing, man.
Each one teach one. I'll try to avoid it, but each one teach one. There
Yo, as for me,
you go.
I'm really grateful to all the panelists, especially Georgie and Evan. You guys are already in tomorrow. So, like, bless you all. Thank you so much, Gabby, Scott, Rob, Keneal, Palesa, Yumika. Like, you guys have, dedicated your time to us. You've stopped what you're doing, your busy schedules, and you came through for us. So I'm sure the entire audience is grateful to you. I personally am, and in my personal capacity as well. What I'm gonna say to the students is this: these opportunities, you'll hardly come across all these experts in one room at the same time like you do during these boot camps and during our Crypto Mondays. So take this to your own advantage. And when you come to these sessions, ask, all those curiosities and questions you have. This is a safe environment. Ask it. There's no dumb question, okay? And don't feel like things are too early. I'm going to repeat this again and again. Every day I'm going to say this. In Africa, in the Caribbean, even in the UK, in the US. And Keneal and them always say, yo, this is not happening in the US. Like things are really behind still, So don't think by hearing developed countries that things are happening that are not happening on your end. Like we're all learning this thing at the same time, as Yumika has said, So it's never too early. Take your thing, take your lane and run with it. And let's all be successful. So we'll link up back in the WhatsApp group later and on LinkedIn for those on LinkedIn. Bless you. Catch you tomorrow. We're going to have smart contracts and NFTs with Sarah Dami Johnson. And then next week, we're going to have global legal stuff with the same crew that's here, Gabby, Georgette, Palesa, Keneal, the same gang. We're all going to be there representing. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic good night. And Georgie and Evan, have a good morning.
Thank you.